What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I hope you like this video. So we got a new show alert, okay? We have a new show alert. This is going to be your review for Reasonable Doubt. It is a thriller that is over on Hulu. It's executive produced by Kerry Washington and Larry Whitmore. I believe she also directs some episodes. I'm not sure, but I think she does. I think she directs some of the episodes. And it's so far so good. You have Michael Ealy. You have a lot of you have some, some new faces in there as well. So the story centers around Jax Stewart. Jax is an attorney. She used to be a public defender. She's now in the private sector. She looks like she's a partner in a law firm. Looks like she's the only black partner in the law firm. So we start this episode off. We see her waking up, struggling to get herself together. We find out that her husband, and her 2 kids are on their way to church. The son is going through some growing pains. He got a little attitude. And we see them in church, and they are laughing and joking, making fun of the lady, in the Gucci dress, asking for donations, and, that kind of thing. Now, her phone goes off while they're in church, and he was like, really? You working on Sundays now? And she talking about some, God know my heart. So, she goes outside, she takes the call, and she come to find out she has this client who's a big time basketball player that's being extorted by this woman that he met in the club. She's saying that, he basically came onto her, made her feel uncomfortable, and he's trying, she's trying to get a payday. So we see her playing hardball with the attorney, and the attorney was like, well, I thought that you was somebody that supported women, but I see not. So, she was like, I don't hear crime. Like, if I hear crime, then I'll act on it. But until then, I don't really hear no crime. So she said, but I'll talk to my client and, I'll get back to you when I can. I'll get back to you when I can. So the next day we see her going to work. And like I said, she got a little sassy black secretary, We see that she's a partner, and she tells the secretary to get her investigator on this woman that's accusing her client. See what her deal is, see what her story is. Well, when she's in her partner's meeting, her partners are letting her know that a man, multi-millionaire, almost billionaire, businessman, black, he'd be a black billionaire by the name of Braden Miller, who's played by my boy. He was Save the Last Dance. That's my man. He plays him, and it's funny because him and Kerry Washington did a TikTok. Well, I guess while they were filming this, and they did their little dance from Save the Last Dance. It's hilarious because I used to really love that movie. Anyway, that's a side note. I'm gonna go down that road today, but. He plays the black billionaire. So Jax and another guy by the name of Rich, another partner in the law firm, and they have a history too, because one of her friends alludes to, is Rich giving you a hard time again? And she was like, no, he's good now. So I feel like this is one of those type of shows where everything that is said, something is going to come back later. So there's something with her and Rich. I'm not saying they had an affair or something, but maybe he had a hard time adjusting to her coming into the law firm. Maybe he gave her a hard time. Maybe he made some insensitive comments or something. But there's something there with her and Rich. They seem to be in a good place now, though. But there's a history there. And I feel like that's going to be important because her friend just kind of threw that out there. But they find out that Braden wants to come and talk to the law firm about handling an issue for him. And, they weren't really sure what it is. So she's going to sit in on the meeting as well as Rich to see what Mr. Miller wants. And, of course, just like any other law firm, it would be great to get a almost billionaire, client, on retainer. So y'all know how that goes. They're going to, they're going to see what's going on, see how they can help, that kind of thing. So we see her going out to lunch with her friends. And again, I feel like this is a way for us to see that, she's got a friend group. One of her girlfriends seems like she's the snooty one of the group, telling her, let me rewind. I missed the whole important part. Rewind. We see her go home that night after that day at work. She talked to her mama, so we're introduced to her mother. We find out that her and her mom, they have that mother-daughter relationship with a mama, kind of getting on her about working too hard and, you take the job too seriously. And she was like, okay, yeah, but this job pays your house off, that kind of thing. Her stepdaddy is having a birthday. We find out later on that stepdaddy is an old white man child. And she don't seem like she really get along with him too much, or she really cares for him too much. I didn't get the impression that she was all, a fan of this man, okay? So she gets home that night, and it's this dude outside. He introduced himself. His name is Will, and he's security. And he was like, yeah, your husband hired me, you know, to be your night, basically your night watchman. And she was like, my husband did what? So we see her go in the house. Well, we find out that her and her husband are not actually living together. They actually are separated, and he was like, well, she has a very dangerous job, so he has security there. So now we understand why the son sort of has an attitude, because the son is mad that mommy and daddy are separated, because he was like, well, Dad, why you can't just move back in? Like, why you got to hire security? Why you can't come back? And she was like, because you want to control everything. So they get to this argument. And she talks about how you just want to control everything. You want to control everything I do, everything I everywhere I go. You want to see everything I'm doing. You want to have control. And he was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Well, we come to find out later on that she ain't paranoid. She's right. This man is watching her on the cameras, I guess like a ring system, or, but he's got it rigged up that he's literally sitting, he's got his own place now, and he is sitting there watching her on the computer, right? So we also find out that the reason why they're separated is because basically he gave her an ultimatum of me or your job, and she chose her job. She was like, it wasn't so much that I chose my job. I didn't like the fact that you gave me an ultimatum. Like, how dare you? So they get into this really heated argument, and like I said, in the argument we find out all these different things about why they're separated, the fact that he moved out, why he moved out, how controlling he is. And we got poor Will outside, like, damn, I don't even know what I did wrong. So later on that night, we see her putting her kids to bed. Again, son got an attitude because he wanted to go with dad, and dad was like, no, you gotta stay here with mom, it's not my night to have you. And son looked like he's maybe a preteen, maybe 12, 13, maybe a little older, maybe 14, maybe, I don't know. The daughter is a little younger, maybe 8 or 9, right? But they're in that age group, right? They're not toddlers, but they're not adults either. Like, probably elementary school, middle school kind of situation going on. Now, the daughter is rolling with it. Daughter love mommy, love daddy. It is what it is. But the son definitely is giving her a hard time and leaning towards dad. So, I don't know if he feels like that mommy's doing dad wrong or whatever. But, kids see what they see through their lens. So, but he's definitely giving her a hard time. So we see her pull out her stash, and I thought she was going to pull out some weed. Child, she pulled out some cigarettes. Why have we as a society made people who smoke cigarettes make them feel like they are just criminals? Like, she put the towel under the door, she opened up the window, and she was leaning out the window smoking her little cigarette. And Sam sees her, the security guard, he sees her, and she hits him with the, like, don't tell nobody that I'm up here smoking a cigarette. Like I said, I thought she was about to pull out some weed with everything she went through, all the preparation that she went through to get this together. So then he pulls out a pack of cigarettes out of his pocket, and he's like, I'll keep your secret if you keep mine, kind of thing. So now we get to the next day, child. So like I said, the next day it looks like she's meeting up with her friends. They're having like a little group thing. And she tells one of her friends, who I'm assuming is a doctor, that she's having trouble sleeping, and could she get a pill from her? And she was like, I don't just be handing out pills. Like, you're not my patient. That ain't what I do. I don't just be out here like, here you go, you go, you go. She said, what you need to do is go and get on top of a good, stiff one, or make up with your husband. Because that's what your problem is. You need to go make up with your husband. Okay? So after that, she goes back to work, and she has the meeting with Braden Miller and with Rich. Now, Braden Miller is like, yes, I'm great. This deal that I'm going to make. He's in. He has like a liquor company or whatever. And he was like, yeah, the deal that I'm getting ready to make is going to make me a billionaire. Like, once I, like this last little hump I got to get over, and it's going to make me a billionaire. And she was like, but he said, but the problem is, one of my former employees, her, by the name of Kalisha Moore, she's threatening to expose some information that she thinks she knows. And so they were like, okay, well, what is it? And he sort of hesitates. And she was like, listen, you ain't got to tell us what it is, but we do kind of need to know what's going on so we can be prepared for what we need to be prepared for. So he tells him this story about how she's accusing him of sexual assault. He says, we did have a relationship. It was consensual, but she was married. I was married. He said, the sex got a little rough sometime, but then he said she started having an unrealistic expectation, is how he worded it, of what he wanted, what she wanted from him. And I guess he's alluding to the fact that she wanted more. She wanted him to leave his wife or whatever. He said, and so basically I realized I had to cut ties. So, he fired her and he cut off the affair. So he's alluding to the fact that this is just like a retaliatory type situation. And he was like, all I need y'all to do is write up an NDA and get her, get her back up off me. Like, pay her off, let her go away. I don't want to sacrifice this deal. So, Jax is letting him know, like, she might want more than money. Like, maybe she wants an apology. Maybe she wants, you to acknowledge her pain, and like the two of them are going back and forth. Like, I could definitely tell he's dismissing her, but she did walk in there with the attitude like, oh, he black, I'm black, I can give him the old homegirl attitude. She's talking to him in slang and stuff like that, and he gave her the look like, yeah, we're not gonna do that. Like, we're not gonna be like, what's up, girl, what's up, bruh. Like, no, we're gonna keep this professional. So he wasn't really feeling Jax, but Jax was telling him some real stuff. But he basically was like, listen, this is all I need you to do. All I need you to do is write up an NDA so that we can get her out of my hair and I can move on with this deal. Like, that's it, that's all. So she realizes that he's an asshole. So she goes back to her office and her investigator comes through. And her investigator lets her know, listen, I done investigated this little IG model, that was accusing the basketball player of inappropriate behavior. And he was like, yo, this is her MO. Like, she's done this to, like, however many other players. She's just trying to get a quick payday. Like, this is what she does. So she goes back to her client and she's like, listen, the lady is the opportunist. She's just trying to blackmail you. Like, I personally don't feel like you should pay her off, because what's to stop her from coming back for more? What's to stop other women from coming out the woodwork if they see how easily you just paid them off? And his agent is like, listen, he got a contract coming up. It could cost him money. I know he's not guilty, but I say we just pay her off and get it over with. And she was like, I mean, do what you feel like you need to do, but I'm telling you not to do it. I wouldn't, that's not my advice. So she said, let me see your phone. So she sent the girl some text messages. And of course the girl, he was like, I want to take you away. I want to, take you down to the Caribbean for a couple of days on my jet and da-da-da-da-da. And the girl's response was basically like, well, we could have started here from the beginning. We wouldn't have had to go through all of that. So she ended up exposing the text messages and clearing her client. So that lets us know what kind of attorney we're dealing with. Somebody who's cunning, somebody who's going to protect her client, that kind of thing. Like, I feel like they were setting us up for that. What we also see is that a man by the name of Damon Cook is trying to get in touch with her. Well, we find that's the character Michael Ealy plays. Well, we found out that Damon Cook was one of her clients when she was a public defender, and she was like, you could tell by her reaction that that case is something different. And she was like, well, let them know that I'm not a public defender anymore. I can't help him. And she was like, well, they know that, they told him that, but they tracked, he wanted to track you down, and he wanted you to know that he's getting ready to basically admit to the crime so he could get parole. And she was like, oh my gosh, that would be the worst thing for him to do. Like, that's a bad decision. I don't like the fact that he's going to do that. So she was like, all right, fine. Tell him I'll come visit him. Because he wanted her to come and see him. So after all of this, child, she finally goes back home and Will is there. And her and Will got this little flirty thing going on. They making little comments that could be read, have little innuendos with them, or they could just be straightforward statements. But definitely it's a little something going on there between her and Will, right? So Will gives her some anxiety pills. He was like, it's not Ambien, because she was saying about she was having a hard time sleeping. And he was like, well, it's not Ambien or anything, but this could help you out. This could be something to help you out or whatever. But again, you see them flirty, and then that's when we see her husband watching her, and I was like, oh, so the husband, so she wasn't wrong when she was like, he want to do too much. But what we find out later on is she knows that he's watching, and so she ends up giving Will this big old hug, like out of nowhere. Will was kind of like, whoa, he hugged her back, but it definitely was extra, right? Like, their conversation didn't really warrant her doing all of that. But again, later on, we find out that she absolutely knows that her husband is watching her, okay? So she actually ends up calling him later on that night because her son didn't call her to say goodnight. And she was like, I want to talk to my son. And he was like, well, he's already in bed. And she was like, well, I told him to call me. And he was like, well, I mean, I told him to give you a call, but, you know, basically, like, he's a teenager. I can't make him call you, you know. And, of course, that irritates her because nobody, I mean, you know, you don't want your kids mad at you. You don't want your kids blaming you for something that you may or may not have done or whatever. Especially with the marriage, because, you know, to hear her side of the story, that's not on her. That's on him, you know. He gave her an ultimatum, and she was like, no, I'm not quitting my job for you, you know. So she ends up going to work the next day and finds out that the black billionaire doesn't want to deal with her anymore. But again, like I said, their interaction was very contentious. And Rich is going to work on the NDA, and that's just that. He said Kalisha is going to come in, and, you know, she's going to sign it, and that's what it is. She also put her investigator on Kalisha to, like, you know, get some background when she thought she was still going to be working on the situation. So she ends up going to visit Damon in jail. And again, you could tell that there's something there. And Damon tells her, he was like, listen, you know, I'm different. Like, you know, basically, I was here the whole time. She was like, look, you were locked up the whole time. So nothing went down. Nothing inappropriate happened. He was like, yeah, nothing inappropriate happened. He was like, but what if I had gotten out? What if I had been acquitted? Where would we be? And he reaches out and holds her hand, and they kind of pause, and then she just yanks away. And she's telling him, listen, don't admit to something you didn't do. Like, you didn't do this crime. Like, don't admit to it. And he was like, listen, that's the only way I can get out of here. She said, but you'll regret it. He said, it says the woman that can walk out the door. And so she told him, she said, listen, if you admit to doing this crime, I'm never going to speak to you again. And then she leaves. So then we see her going out for drinks with her girlfriend. And she tells her girlfriend, listen, I don't want to talk about nothing. I don't want to have no deep conversation. I just want to get drunk. Okay? She ends up getting drunk. Yeah. She ends up getting drunk and going over to her ex-husband. Well, her husband, but her separate husband she's estranged from. And she's like, I want to see my kids. I want to see my kids. He was like, girl, you drunk. He was like, come on, let me talk to you. So they go sit in the car so that they don't wake up the kids or whatever. And he was like, listen, I know what you want. And so he ends up, you know, making her orgasm in the car. And then he's like, okay, bye. And she was like, what? Like, mother. You know what I'm saying? Like, really, for real, that's what you doing? You going to get me off on the front seat of the car, and then you ain't even going to finish it. Like, you ain't even going to give me the good. Like, you know what I'm saying? So she ends up going home, and who's out front? Will. So her and Will end up talking, and again, they doing a little more flirting. Again, they smoking their little cigarettes and stuff. But she ends up going into the, you know, nothing really goes down. She goes to bed. So then we see her and her and her husband taking the kids to her mother's house for the stepdaddy's birthday, and, you know, they again playing like they are one big happy family, even though the family knows they're separated, but they all showing up, smiles and laughing and all that good stuff. And while this is going on, we see that Damon did what he had to do. He went to the parole board, he lied, and he's getting released. So he's getting out. We see Kalisha show up at the law firm to sign her NDA with her cousin. Now, Kalisha got a law degree, so Kalisha ain't she ain't no dumb chick or whatever. She had a high position in the company too. Like, she wasn't like a secretary or nothing. She was like right on her position was like right underneath the CFO. And she was like, well, you know, she was gonna sign the paper, but then she was like, well, this is what he did to me. And the term, Rich was like, well, look, it's your word against his. Like, there's no proof that he did anything. And I think that's what did it. Like, wait a minute, what? Like, for real? So she ends up tearing the NDA up, and on her way out, she runs into Jax, and she basically lays her out. She was like, listen, when a black woman tells you that she was raped, you need to believe her. And she rolls out. So then we see Rich talking to Mr. Black Billionaire and telling him, listen, Kalisha, she changed her mind. You might want to hire a publicist because she about to head on over to Good Morning America. She about to really blast it. So Mr. Black Billionaire was like, yeah, I know what Kalisha needs, and I'm going to give it to her. And he's like, the way he said it was real sinister, was like real, like, it was real eerie. It was a little, made you a little nervous. And even Rich kind of felt some kind of way, like, wait a minute, what? What's going on? So Kalisha gets back to the house. I mean, not Kalisha, Lord. Jax. She gets back to the house and she fed up. She mad at her husband. She mad at her job. You know, she left her mama house. She wasn't happy about the situation. And basically, her and Will end up having sex on the couch. And the whole time she having sex with Will, she's staring at that camera. That's how I said, oh, she really does know that her husband is watching her. Because he's staring at that camera the whole time. I mean, she's staring at that camera the whole time. And guess what? He watching. So I'm kind of like, is this what they do? Like, is this their thing? You know what I'm saying? But basically, that's what last but not least, the next morning she gets a phone call. It's Rich calling her to tell her that Kalisha is dead. Baby. So that's where so that was the first episode. It looks like it's going to be pretty good. We're going to check it out. I think the first 4 episodes are on Hulu. Maybe 3. Anyway, is anybody watching it? Put it in the comments. Let me know. Talk to y'all later. Peace.